Information about a shooting in Suffolk. Witnesses say the violence started after an argument over who should play Aretha Franklin in a movie. Tony Lundy was shot yesterday and rushed into emergency surgery. 13 News Now reporter Stephen Graves is live in the studio tonight with what we know tonight.
Yeah, there's not much detail into that verbal argument, but we are seeing there's much more to the story. Paperwork now gives insight into why the suspect claims he had to shoot and almost kill. A fight in a Suffolk barbershop spills into a street, results in a shooting. Witnesses say a disagreement between two men in their 40s over who should portray Aretha Franklin in a movie led to all of this, landing one in jail and another struggling to survive.
Seeing him land there like that, it's very emotional.
This is Tony Lundy's lifelong friend. She says he is well known in Suffolk, a former standout basketball player.
I just hate seeing him like that because he's such a big, strong, tall guy.
Court documents say he was shot 3 times by Michael Hatton, a bullet to the back collapsing his lung. One to the abdomen meant a part of his small intestine had to be removed. A criminal complaint says it started when Hatton and Lundy got into a fight inside the shop off East Washington Street. Witnesses say Lundy started it, and at one point paperwork says he got on top of Hatton. The suspect then pulled out a gun, followed Lundy outside. Officers found the victim laying in the street.
He definitely did not deserve this.
Hatton told detectives that he shot because Lundy was coming toward him and that he, quote, was in fear of his life. A result with life-changing consequences over what seems to be a small issue. But Lundy's family and friends are avoiding the headlines and waiting for more answers.
Pretty much it's hearsay until I actually get an opportunity to talk to him and hear his side of the story.
And at last check, Lundy remains in critical condition. Hatton did not want to speak to us from jail. He is being held, though, without bond and faces a total of 4 felony charges. Stephen Graves, 13 News Now.